Good evening again. I'd like to call the committee of the whole for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 to order with roll call, please.
Kostler,
Here.
McAlpine,
Here.
Kraus,
Here.
Betts,
Here.
Weinhammer,
Here.
Cavelli.
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Where's my board?
We'll now move to the public comment section of the Committee of the Whole meeting. Is there anybody that would like to address the Committee of the Whole on any other topic besides what's already on the agenda, Maplewood? Second call for that. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comments. Moving to the main topic of tonight is a discussion on the Maplewood property development. Turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, again, is a discussion regarding the potential development of the Maplewood property. This is the third discussion we've had before the village board on the subject. It's a second review of a concept plan. I have a brief presentation, which is similar to what you've seen before, just to give an overview of the process to date as far as how the process has gone to get to the point we're at in the development process. So briefly, just the purpose of tonight's discussion is review that process. The developer will present their concept plan for the property, which has been revised since our last meeting in October, and then provide feedback on the plan for future refinement and potential zoning petition to move through the zoning process on the site. A quick overview of how we got to where we're at today. Back in May, District 26 advertised a request for bids for the property, seeking interest in the site to develop the property for potential sale and redevelopment. In early July, they held a bid opening to review any bids that were submitted by the development community for review. And on July 17th, they selected a preferred purchaser for the site. Following that meeting in August, the first introductory meeting before the village board was held with the developer, where we discussed introduced Mr. Taylor to the board and also reviewed the comprehensive plan recommendations for the site. In October, first concept plan that was drafted by the developer was proposed for review and discussion. And since that time period, he's been refining the plan based off feedback that was received at that meeting. Tonight is just the second discussion on to discuss the revised development concept plan and seek additional feedback prior to a formal petition through the zoning process. Just for information for the public, so they're aware, there is information on our website that we're updating periodically with updates regarding the redevelopment of the property. You can access this information on the Village of Cary website, caryillinois.com, under the community development page. There's Maplewood School property updates, which gives the timeline as far as where we're at, and also information on the concept plans that are being presented this evening. With that, I'll turn discussion over to Mr. Taylor to come back up, and he can provide additional information on his plan, the revisions that he's made to date based off the last discussion that we had before the village board back in October. And then staff obviously will be present here to answer any questions you may have or help in the deliberation and discussions this evening.
Thank you. And just a note on the process, we'll follow the same procedures we followed at the last two meetings for Maplewood. Everybody will be given an opportunity to have their concerns heard. I'd like for people to limit their conversations to 3 minutes. And we're going to let the petitioner, hopefully he'll be able to answer as many questions that you may have already, and then we'll be able to follow up again. As soon as the petitioner is done with his presentation, I'm going to ask the village board if they have any preliminary questions before we get going. Then we'll open up to the audience here for questions, and then we'll wrap it up with the conversation with the village board. So that, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm sure some of you are probably tired of seeing me here. Or possibly even considering charging me rent for the amount of time I've spent here. Part of the reason I wasn't back, I've been coming here almost on a monthly basis, but I haven't been here for the last couple of months. Part of that is I've spent a tremendous amount of time with your staff, trying to get all of the comments, and I really think that I've come as close as I possibly can to putting a plan together that we can hopefully get together on. And if I could, I can probably go back and I'd like to show you the previous plan, but I think I'd almost rather if we could bring up the current plan that I'm presenting this evening, and I'd like to kind of just talk it through with you and kind of tell you the changes I've made, because it's kind of hard to go back, in my case, I don't remember where I was yesterday on a lot of things. So for me to expect you to remember what I presented to you 2 months ago, I think is unfair. And what I'd like to do with that, with the plan that we basically have up there, I'd like to just kind of give you a brief overview of what I changed on it and what changed from the last plan that I presented to you. And if we could, I'm going to start out at the northwest corner, but I'm not sure everybody here would know what I'm referring to as the northwest corner, so I'm going to go point to it if I can. Just to get everybody oriented, this is what I call the northwest corner. This is the south end of the property. And if I talk about the north end, this is what I'm referring to when I say the north. And if I call this the east, the east, and I'm going to call this the west. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is point out that the original plan that I had here last time, we had 5 apartment buildings. And what I did is I shifted the apartments down, because one of the complaints or one of the concerns that was expressed to me was the close proximity of this apartment building to the residences on the west side of the development. So what I did is I pushed this apartment complex further southeast, which was one of the concerns. There was a second concern, and that basically was at the southeast corner of the development. And the same problem existed there. These apartments, there was a concern that was too close to the existing residents that were on the south end of the property. So what I did is I pushed that apartment building further north. Well, that was wonderful, but what happened once I did that, I basically wound up, in order to accommodate those, I did lose a unit, which I'll kind of get into later on. So I lost one of the apartment buildings. The third thing that I did, and if you remember the last plan that I had here, we had what they call rear-loaded townhouses over in this area that back up to the property owners to the west side of our property. And with that road back there, with the garages being rear-loaded, you're having lights coming in and out of the garages. So what we decided to do, part of this was not totally my idea. I had some encouragement from your staff here. We removed that, and I converted those from rear-loaded townhouses to front-loaded townhouses. The fourth thing we did, and this was never brought up here, but I think your staff and some of your board members were very much aware of it, is we basically, there's what we call it, I don't know if the correct terminology I should use, it's called a commuter road, that basically gets the traffic that will ultimately come from Cary-Algonquin Road over to the back of our property and hopefully get some of these people to the train station. And what I did is, if you take a look, I've shown that road all the way across the north end of our property and connecting to the existing road, the road that currently exists over here. Now, in order to do that, I'm sure a lot of you residents that are located just to the east or the west of our subdivision, what happens with the detention? Because there was some existing detention ponds there. And what we did with that, I basically am in the process of reconfiguring that to accommodate the existing detention requirements for the existing residents, and also to be able to accommodate the necessary detention we will need basically to provide for the townhouses and the apartments. Also, one of the things that was pointed out on the previous plan that I had, we had typically 9 units in most of our buildings. And of course, your staff pointed out to me, and by the way, I took that from the master plan, but it was pointed out to me that what happens, their existing ordinance in Cary calls for no more than 6 units in a building. So what we did is I've been through this process enough times to know that I want to come in and request the least amount of variances I possibly can. And what I did is we then cut the units from 9-unit buildings down to 6, and 6-unit buildings, 5-unit buildings, and I think there's 1 4-unit building in here. The net result was, the last plan that I had here had 250 apartments on it. We reduced that down to 200. The townhouses, I think to the best of my knowledge, I think we had 78 townhouses. This plan has 69. So the total density count on this basically is 269 units that we're looking for. If I could, can I bring up the exteriors? Because I think that pretty much covers my presentation on the land plan. The second thing that was brought up, and a lot of this by the board members, is some of my exteriors, I think several of you pointed out, were kind of plain. I'm looking at one who made that point on the things. And so what I did do is I've gone back on both the townhouses and the apartments, and I'm trying to do, I know what everybody would like. In the perfect world would be a lot of brick. Unfortunately, the world I live in, I work with lenders, I do have, people basically are price sensitive, so I have to bring all of that into account. So what I've done is I've gone out, and we did a tremendous amount of research, my younger son did, on what the product is all the way from here, all the way to Des Plaines or to the edge of Chicago. And the conclusion we came to is this would be an exterior very similar to this. Now, if we go to a public hearing, I will get into specific drawings. This is pretty close. And what it is, if you notice, I got a mixture of brick and hardy siding that will be on the units for the townhouses, the townhouse units. The second thing I'd like to bring up along with that, if I could, is the apartments. And what I did with the apartments, this again, we went out and did the same type of a study to find out, hey, what are the rents? What are they offering? And I got to tell you something. This, what I stretched to in order to make this work, is probably far exceeds anything, any apartments that have been built basically from Palatine west on the things. And what we did is it would be an exterior very similar to this. If you want to see kind of a, let me tell you where I took that picture, what it is. It's the newest project that's being developed in Schaumburg, right over by Motorola. And it's a neat look. In fact, I kind of told the staff, I almost wanted to take the picture that I took myself on my iPhone. I couldn't believe how the picture turned out. But my son kind of told me I was technologically, I was kind of a failure. So he corrected it, and that's the view of it. But it's representative of the brick and materials we'll be using, which would be the brick and the hardy board and that type of a look. And I think that pretty much between the land plan and these exteriors are what I consider to be the best plan that I could possibly present to you this evening, and hopefully get to the point that I think it's good enough where we could at least be going to a public hearing. Thank you. Oh, and one other thing I did want to point out. I've been talking to all of you people, and I know a lot of these people in the audience have been talking to me about engineering. And I want you to raise your hands. I did do something special tonight. Instead of me being the engineer, I brought my engineer with me. I do have one. And his name is Kevin Seraphin from SEMCON. And if any of you people have engineering questions of any type, I want you to bring him up at this time or sometime this evening, because he is available, very familiar with the plan, and has worked very closely with me putting this thing together. Jackie's been involved with me for about 6 months on it, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Taylor. I'll open up to the board for some preliminary questions before we go to the public comment. Anybody have any comments,
I have a couple comments.
questions?
Well, comment-wise, I think one thing you didn't mention that at least, and maybe I'm incorrect, but it looks to me like you made a much larger park area, which I thought was
Thank you
something
for
that we were
reminding
looking
me
at.
of that, and I was supposed to get I was going to get that acreage for part of my presentation. Unfortunately, my engineer, who was on his way out here, got caught in an accident and got diverted through Barrington Hills, and he's not from this area, so he didn't know where he was. But yes, we did increase the park area. And without going into a lot of the details, if you take a look at one of the plans we put together, the previous plans, we had 2 rows of townhouses on the west side of that place. And on the east side, when we relocated it, we got rid of 1 row of townhouses. So there was an extra green space that was created on that.
Right.
And if you take a look at the green space up in that northeast corner, you'll see that was increased dramatically also.
Well, I just want to commend you on that, because I think that was a concern also of that a lot of residents, and I think some of the board members that we had. I appreciate the fact that you listened to the major concern I think that everybody had was the density. So dropping off almost 60 units, looks to me from these numbers, that's a positive, I believe. And maybe it's just me, and maybe as you're saying, maybe I'll have to drive down and look at that property in Motorola, because when I looked at those multifamily dwelling ones, not the townhouses, my initial reaction was yuck. I just didn't find it pleasing. I found it, just like, but again, maybe the picture didn't do it justice. I'm more than willing to take a look down there. I don't know how people feel about that, but I think one of the major concerns I had when we talked initially too was just making sure what specifically was going to be used, because once it's there, it's there. And, we want to make sure that it's something that fits in well with the neighborhood and is going to increase values for people that live over there versus a detriment to it. I just found it not aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I was going to bring my iPhone photograph,
Sure.
which was a 24 by 36, that I thought was striking. But if you would, I want you to just take a look at that location.
Oh, I will.
And I think if you go over there and look at it, you will look at that apartment complex as probably one of the nicest complexes you're going to see outside of downtown Chicago. But take a look at it. I can't.
I definitely will. As I said,
Okay, thank you.
I'm just saying from the picture that it just was not something I was anticipating.
City Algonquin.
I know exactly where it would be.
Go to the
So I will.
website. know there's pictures.
I don't really want to go to Woodfield this time of year, but I'll kind of head that way.
If you go to the website.
I understand.
He's not a photographer.
Okay. I will do that.
See, he's not as good as he thought he was.
Well, no, you can only do what.
You can only do what you can do.
Okay. All right.
Those are kind of my comments.
Any other comments from over here? Jim, Jeff? No. Any comments?
I had a question. One of the things that was brought up last time was potentially some retail space down there, and you said you were going to look into that. So
Say that again.
retail
Oh,
space
retail,
down
yeah.
below?
Let me answer that. Basically, the retail, what I did is, if you notice, I've extended the road to the the east edge of the property. Unfortunately, that road that I have put in there is, I went out and had a market study done on it. I cannot get enough traffic over there with that configuration to be able to justify putting the retail over there. At some point in time, if and when that road ever got extended where it was a regular, full-service road, there may be some potential for it. But right now, basically, the market study that I had done, I could not justify it at all. Because right now, for all practical purposes, that road is going to end there. If you take a look, it's kind of stubbed in right now. I'm making a connection over there, but there is no way for you to get there from Highway 14 or, what is that, what's the name of the street there that goes straight, isn't it?
Main Street.
Main Street, or Main Street, basically, to get back there. Unfortunately, I've had some requests from people that, single users, hairdressers, that type of stuff, nail places, for something back there. But as far as being able to generate enough business to justify changing the apartments to that alternate use, and by the way, I did go through some plans for that alternate use, but it's just impossible, absolutely impossible to do something like that as part of this plan with what I'm dealing with.
Village staff has started the discussion here of talking to Metra about an extension here from that site to High Road here, but we're still very early in the process with our conversations with Metra. So right now, as you heard, developer doesn't have retail as a part of this.
When you state it's a service road, what do you mean? What's the difference between a service road and a full service road?
Well, the road that you have there right now is between my property, or my proposed property, and Main Street. I don't know how you could get back there. If you take a look, I mean, I drive back there, but if you drive there, you're going through the parking lot,
Metro lot.
it's just parking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impossible to generate enough traffic unless somebody had a specific use with a specific destination in mind, hairdresser, nail, something like that. But the market study I did it was just I mean, it didn't even get off the ground.
And none of the traffic generated by this development will be able to utilize that road to exit out that way instead of going towards Main Street?
I don't think any of our traffic will go out that way through to Main Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think it'll go out to Cary Algonquin?
Again,
No?
I think that would be something,
Or here.
Okay.
I think what would happen is I'm not a traffic consultant, so I'm not trying to, I've talked to traffic consultants, I've talked to my engineer who has traffic consultants as part of his team, and that's where I'm getting my information from.
So just for clarification, you're saying that the residents in your development will most probably utilize your service road to get out to Cary Algonquin Road rather than going through downtown on Main Street?
I understand your question. I'm not sure. I have not addressed this from a traffic standpoint. I will, if we go to the next step, the staff made it very clear to me that one thing we have to do is provide you a complete traffic study with the plan, whatever plan we decide to go with.
There's a lot more details that are going to be fleshed out here.
Yeah.
And certainly with the traffic study, we're going to get a lot more information. We're still flying here high level and not getting down, in the nitty gritty of this development. So we will have more information here. If Mr. Taylor decides to go forward, he's certainly going to have to provide a traffic study as a part of this development.
So when I look at this, between the two apartment buildings fronting along the train tracks, is there access then from the parking lot to the access road?
Yes,
There is, okay.
That's-
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
yes.
That's where I would think that would want to go.
Yeah.
Again, I like the way that you changed, that you really did surround the entire neighborhood by the townhouses. I think that was really needed. I think that needed to be the proper transition from a neighborhood to the townhouses and then multifamily next versus someone looking out their window and having a multifamily right next to their single-family home.
Thank you.
Now, you had shown two different types of townhomes last time. One like this that was just 2 levels?
Yes.
And then now you're showing the 3 levels townhomes.
Yes.
Would it be possible for the homes that back up to, on the on the west side,
West side.
the homes that back up to the townhomes, that you would build something that's just 2-story instead of the 3-story?
I understand your question.
So that's,
And-
I would like to see that instead of looking at a 3-story. If I was living there instead of,
But I'm trying to figure out the easiest way to answer that question. I'm not saying some of those units, probably, some of those buildings may be 2-story. What happens is if I go to a 3-story building, and part of this is what we're trying to do here, in order to justify this, I just have to work with density. I need a certain number of units. And people can only pay so much. And what I can do is some of those units, when I get into it probably a little further, some of those units may be a little wider. And some of my units may be a little lower, or narrower, I should say. But I haven't determined that, and I will determine that if I go to a public hearing. I will get into more specific. And I think what I'm trying to do now is just get as much information. But right now, the way I presented that, those are 3-story units. And the only way I can consider going out and making them 2 stories, I have to make them wider, and then I have to be able to sell those units for the same price. And I'm not convinced that the people will pay the same price for less square footage. I'll look at it. But I mean, right now it is 3 stories, and that's basically where I'm at. I'm going to have to stick with that this evening at the point where I'm at.
I think a lot of these details too, I mean, they're going to get fleshed out through the process. If the developer decides to go to a public hearing, he's going to have to provide a lot more detail to the village board. And so we're still in the very early concept phase, and there could be refinements, adjustments. The chips may move around a little bit, but right now, I think it's important to provide the developer of, things that you like about the development, and then maybe if there's things that you think could be improved in the development, that's valuable feedback for him and for village staff, so that we can know how the developer may want to proceed with this project.
Any other questions from this side?
At the last meeting, you gave us a price point that you were kind of anticipating what these might be selling for. Was that based on a study you had done? Or do you have a price point for these now, what you're kind of anticipating?
I had a price point 6 months ago. The way the housing market is today, in December is not a good time to look at it. So what I did is I would assume that the townhouses would be in the upper 2s. I can tell you that. It'll start in the upper 2s on the things. It's until I get, that's about as close as I could come today.
I look at some of the developments we have in town already that are condominium, townhome, owner occupied, and I see what those are selling for, and I just have a hard time convincing myself that you would be able to get that kind of a price point.
Unfortunately, and I think the big question is, what will somebody pay for a new home versus an older home? I mean, the one thing we have going for us, we have 9 and 10 foot ceilings on the first floor. I mean, 9 foot on the second floor, 8 foot doors. All the environmental issues that we can provide that you can't get in the dated homes. Now the question is, what will someone pay for that? My opinion is, if you take a look at those homes, I still think a similar home, someone will pay 25% more. So I wouldn't look at us to say that we're going to be doing something at the same price. We aren't. We aren't.
I have a question about your site plan. The middle building that you have there for the multifamily, the 4-story building there, does that not have underground parking?
All of those units, we have first floor parking, not underground, just first floor.
Okay. Because I don't see any access points to that building, one that's in the middle. There's no driveways to that? How is that going to fit in?
Well, what I'm going to do is as I walk by my engineer who put this together for me, and there are some details, you know, that we have to work out on that.
Okay.
But it does work. He says it works, but he didn't bail me out, all this money that I paid him.
Okay. I agree with, it's, actually, I was looking forward to having the 3 different choices of housing there, the 2-story townhouses with the 3-story, and then the apartments. I thought it would have been a good transition. So I agree with that. I'd like to see, what your final thoughts would be on that, as well as the exterior elevations. To quote a dear friend of mine, I found them a little underwhelming, to be honest. I was hoping for something that would have been a little bit more quaint, more kind of match the character of our community and that town, or the downtown area that's there already, the existing homes. I looked back at your presentation that you had on September 29th, the 3 stories and the apartment building, the 2 stories. I thought those looked a little bit nicer than the ones that you're presenting now, but I'll hold off my judgment on that until I can take a look. I'm down in Schaumburg, as a matter of fact, I'll be right there tomorrow. Take a look at what those.
I'm open. I'm open on any of that, to work with your staff. If you thought what I presented last time was better, I don't have any problem with any of that.
Well,
I'd like to get everybody's comment on those exteriors.
Yeah, the
But I
density
think you're
numbers,
fine.
the reduction in your density numbers are more appealing. The way that the site plan has come together is more appealing, in my opinion. I think that we've hit a lot of the nails on the head that were the concerns of some of the existing residents. And if there's no other comments from our board, I'd like to hear what the residents now think about this next rendering. So we'll start orderly like we did the last time. I'm going to start over here, see if this young man over here has any comments or questions about that. None? We'll go right down this first row. Nothing? Nothing? You do, come on up. If you could just state your name and address. I'd like to try to keep this to 3 minutes if possible.
Yeah, no
please.
problem. It's just a quick statement. Some of the issues of Dave Stevens, 338 Krenz Avenue again. You kind of addressed by moving your apartment complex back a little bit from the back of my property, but you still put a 3-story townhome back there. So you really didn't address any of my fears. 3 stories is still going to be way taller than my house. So it's not much to look at for me. You did some improvements, but overall, I'm still leery of this situation. That's all I got.
Thank you. Continue down this first row here. Yes, sir.
Bill Rietveld, 551 Krenz Avenue. Could you put up the picture of the 4-story that he had, please? Okay, that one. Now, you're saying that these are going to be your 4 apartment buildings, what they look like on the outside, correct? Similar. And you're saying that there's first floor parking?
First floor parking.
So that means that it's going to be, in fact, a 5-story building?
No.
No? Okay,
What you see there will have parking on the first floor.
okay,
That'd be different if you could visualize the parking on that first
all
floor.
right. So it'll be 3 stories of living space
Yes,
and 4 of those buildings?
yes.
Okay. And obviously, they're taller than the 2-story multifamily buffer. So anybody that's, living that, I mean, you see the 2 stories, and then behind that, you're going to see the 3 stories. Okay. The green space. Could we have the green space up, please? Sorry, Mayor. 3 areas of green space. One of them is going to be a retention pond, so that's green space, yeah, but there's no, playing in a pit. This whole development, it's going to be a homeowners association. Are the homeowners the only ones that are going to be able to use that green space? Or is that going to be open for Cary residents? The next comment I would like to make is the village administrator stated that this is the early concept stage, the high-level view. High-level view, the road, okay, is, like I said before, is that a foregone conclusion? I mean, is that going to happen? Because if it happens, then there's other things that should happen, in my opinion, okay? We should definitely have access from this development to that road. If you make it one way, where they can't come from the metro lot into that development, okay, so you can only go out, then if you're going to Crystal Lake, the obvious quickest way is to go down that access road next to the tracks and boom, out to Cary Algonquin Road, okay? If you're going to Algonquin, you're going to come out this way, hit Main Street, and go that way, okay? Is there an issue with the railroad, the easement, okay? How much is that going to set back? Where is the road going to be then? How much property, you know, gets taken up with the road and taken away from Mr. Taylor, okay? That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Thank you. Next.
Christy Wagner, 539 Krenz. I too had questions about the access road and actually all the entrances to the subdivision. Are there, from what it looks like, are there two entrances and exits into this development? One off of, is it School? And one Prairie. Is that correct?
The third would be the access road.
It would be if, but would it be two-way? I mean, is it going to be two-way? It is. Okay. All right, those were some of my main concerns. And also the open space, is that going to be maintained by the Park District, Cary Park District? Will they receive impact fees for that? And I'm just curious again, you know, who is able to use that green space?
Okay. Any questions? We'll start back over here. Any questions?
Well, I didn't plan on speaking about this today. And Sean Wheeler, I live on Pearl Street, so everyone behind me probably doesn't care what I have to say. But with that being said, I feel like I have a fair amount of experience in some of these matters only aesthetically, and Mr. Taylor's kind of, there seems to be like a catch-22. I don't live behind this future development, but I feel like a lot of what some of the residents may be asking, I would ask them, if, for instance, the backloaded townhomes, the no 3 stories, let's go 2, I feel like being in the high 2s would be undoable if you don't have 3-story townhomes. Would the residents rather have higher price point homes behind them, or would they rather, you know, everything that I've heard so far among the mumblings in the crowd, those things kind of devalue some of these homes, make them less and less valuable, and I completely empathize as much as I can and understand. But I feel that if the development would happen either way, you would hope to have the highest of quality, the most desirable, and having been in thousands of these 3-story backloaded townhomes through the northwest suburbs, those are some of the most desirable. And those 2 stories, like Mr. Taylor said, are, I think, more difficult to ask $299,000 for. And I feel like it's a difficult balance, and I understand that some of these things the residents may want, living behind it, sometimes make them a lower value, which may be less desirable to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Go on here. No comments? Comments? Barbara? Comments? Anybody over down that second row there? Nothing? Start back over the 3rd row. Any comments? Did you want to say something?
Hi, my name's Tim. I live at 239 North School Street. I'm kind of interested from your engineering point. I mean, you're building, what, nearly 300 homes there. What kind of different, I mean, I saw the green spaces there, but what kind of other sustainability things you're incorporating into your big project here? I mean, we live in the day and age, lots of problems, lots of energy problems, and besides green spaces, I don't know if you're how far along you are in your development, but what kind of other stuff are you incorporating into the project? Because, I mean, building something this magnitude, everyone on the board should be thinking about the future. I mean, they're going to be there for a very long time. You should be thinking about, I mean, you don't have to build some kind of like LEED platinum or net zero buildings, obviously, but I mean, seeing some kind of interest in energy, something for future projects going forward. I mean, I don't see any of that in there right now, and that's what I'm really concerned about, adding that much to our town. And I mean, I don't see any solar panels, I don't see any electric cars charging, I don't see anything besides the green space being taken into account, so.
So your main concern is
Sustainability, I mean, that's a lot of units to be building in a small spot, and I mean, everything building going forward now, any building in Cary, I feel should be, in any town across America should be thinking about that type of, in their plans and designs for any building, so.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, Jimmy. All of you guys.
Back to the third row. Anybody have a comment? Coming back over here. Start with the fourth row in the back. Any comments?
Chris Nance, 442 Whitworth Circle. Obviously, I don't live in this immediate area, given my address, but I do believe that this has the potential to be an excellent addition for Cary. It's about what we consider the highest and best use of the property, and this is definitely a highest and best use. It has the potential. There is a premium for new construction, as the gentleman said, and it has the potential to actually promote higher values in the area. I agree with the comments the gentleman made about the 3-story townhomes as well. If you look in downtown Palatine, you can see an excellent example of how these types of uses can be very complementary to the area. And I do also agree with the comments that were made about the exterior elevations. I do think there's an opportunity to dress those up quite a bit. But overall, very much in favor of this.
Thank you. Thank you. Right down. Come on up.
My name's Kristen Fadden, 26 North Prairie Street. So I'm still very concerned about all the cars coming down my street. My street is only a half a block. So to get onto Main Street, like today on the way here, it took me 10 minutes to get out of my street because of all the commuters. And it looks like, according to the drawing, and I know this is just a drawing, but if I lived in some of those back apartments over there, I would come straight down Prairie Street or come out on School Street. And School Street has the same problem, that it's only a half a block because we only have 2 houses that are on those streets. So there's not a whole lot of space. And then my only other question was, across, like, there's Prairie Street, so there's the houses that remain, and then on the other side, are those more of those 3-story townhouses right there? Kind of like where the gym is presently at Maplewood.
Right on Prairie, there's 4, it looks like there's 4 units there. Would those be the 3, those are, well, they're all going to be the 3-story. That would be a 3-story.
Just standing by themselves there. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Mike Boyd, 572 Alita. A couple of questions. First of all, can you tell me what the building height is on the 3-story and the 4-story? What's the actual height?
All I can tell you is they conform with your existing zoning ordinance. Whatever that is, I went over it with the planning department.
Brian, do you have a rough estimate on that?
Maximum height for the residential is
For what?
35 feet?
35 feet for the,
elevation that shows the actual
for the 4-story is 35 feet. What does
That is
mean, the
not, it's
midpoint of
not
the roof?
measured to the top.
It's not measuring to the top of the peak? Okay, is Whitey here? Be interesting to put one of his cranes up there to see exactly how high that really is. So that's 35 feet. I was disappointed that we didn't get a copy of this in advance so that we could look at it. Will this be on the website?
It is on the website right now.
Okay, I didn't see it the other day, so, okay. And the Schaumburg location that you're talking about, where is that?
Yeah,
I mean,
680.
680 Algonquin Road?
I know where it is.
And the density of the apartment buildings is still 50 units per building. You're down to 4 buildings, but still 50 units. Okay, all right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions over here? Yes, sir?
Yeah, Jerry Barrett, 557 Krenz. I think we still haven't addressed the elephant in the room. Is you have a landlocked parcel, and the only way you can get anybody make a profit in it is by high density. We also have traffic problems, you know, the price point. This is the first time in 10 years that my block has been full, that I haven't had an unoccupied house. So, you know, you can buy any house on my street for less than half of, or close to half of that price that you're asking for. So I think that's going to be a major problem. There again, the retention pond, the flooding, the traffic, how you're ever going to make that access road go out to Cary Algonquin without going to the fire department or cutting off the retention pond down there, I don't know. But I think it's just a major problem. It's just a too small parcel of the land for that high density.
Thank you. Anybody else over on this side? I will open up to anybody else at the back of the room. Please come forward.
Tim Allen, 223 North School. So I back up to the west end there. I unfortunately, as a couple of my friends here in the room, have gardens that are on the east side of our property. And the west side, now those are going to be 2-story buildings on the west end, or those 3? Okay, my little garden is about 20 feet from the fence that's there now. What type of easement? And is there a road there? Okay, so but the buildings will then come, how close to that fence? How are you transitioning these properties? I mean, am I going to have a building 35 feet away in my backyard? Am I set? That's right. Well, there's still buildings. Okay, so is there going to be a berm? Are there going to be trees?
Oh, there'll be some landscaping, yes.
As far as, just want to know what I'm looking at the back of the
Well,
house.
if we basically go to a public hearing, we will provide a landscape plan.
All right, and the public hearing is well before a decision's made?
Yes.
All this has to be fleshed out, because you know I'm worried about the traffic big time too, but I think it's been addressed here.
Right.
Because it's a tremendous number of cars that are coming out of it. But this guy knows more about that than me. So we'll wait as we step along. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else would like to ask a question? Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Barbara Mattson, lived in Cary for a long time. I'm the first one to admit I'm a dummy, but everything that this man wants to do, I think is good. Somewhere else. I mean, to me, you're asking for traffic congestion, pollution, flooding, name it. You know, you asked for my opinion. There you have it.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Please come forward.
I'm Teresa Slavic, and I live on Kranz Avenue. I think I just want to reiterate what everyone's saying here, the concerns that if we have an ill-advised development, That doesn't address our needs. I get a little concerned when I'm hearing we're not getting into the nitty-gritty of the details. When we get into it, I'll look at it further. It doesn't address traffic, promises, or any of those things that we have to deal with. It takes me 10 minutes for my daughter to cross the street at Briargate, sometimes at 5 o'clock. It's not safe. Traffic is a concern. EPA issues are a concern, and that's still a lot of housing. It's only 69 from your last proposal. The last one was 5 times the units. This is 4 times. It doesn't blend into the community whatsoever. And even though it tries to, it still doesn't. It's a small parcel. It's 15 acres. It's way too much for the area. We would like, it just is, it's too much. So, and I think that needs to be addressed. And I know you want to make money, right? And I just don't know if this is the property to be able to do it.
Thank you. Anybody else like to? Yes, sir.
Ron Gillen, 582 Alada Drive. The density is, I think, a huge concern. And the piece of property is what it is, size-wise. But the acreage was interesting, and I thought it was 15, but after one of the previous meetings, there was an article in the paper. Crystal Lake is struggling to put 360 units on 62 acres. The city is saying it's too dense, and I'm saying they should come to Cary. We know how to do it. So I'm being a little sarcastic, but I don't think we can comprehend the density. I mean, none of it. I can't, but I know it's a lot. And I really think that's a major subject to be addressed. And somebody needs to see this thing from a bigger picture. That's all I got to say.
Is there anybody else? One more time. Yes, sir.
I've been sitting here for couple of meetings now where we've gone to Dave Wagner, Krenz Street, 539. And I'm trying to wrap my head around this and have an open mind about the whole thing. And I look at the tracks, and the road is supposed to parallel the tracks. And is that road back there going to be a single lane road, double lane road? I think we deserve to see the road drawn up in the plan, exiting west and exiting east. Connected. Let's see what it's going to really look like. Let's see how much room there is for a retention pond. Maybe they need to squeeze this thing in a little bit, pull them all down south. I don't know. But right now, this kind of feels like the bill they had to sign with Obamacare. You got a 2,000-page document. We're not going to read it until we pass it. Mm-hmm. I want to see it before we pass it. That's all.
I appreciate your comments. Let me just reiterate what we're doing here this evening. This is the third time that this developer has come forward with an idea. He's listened to what the residents that have shown up at the meeting are concerned with. He's trying to put together a project that would be tolerable for everybody and that would move our village forward. What developers typically do, they go through this process. Before, they want to find out what the temperature is of the board, they want to find out what the temperature is of the neighbors to see what we can do. So before they go guns a-blazing with all the engineering and the final renderings and going through the ZPA, they like to have an understanding if the board mainly has an appetite to move this forward. And this is what we're doing here. This is the third time that he's presented to the village board or the committee of the whole, and the third time that you've had an opportunity to have your concerns addressed. And he's well aware of what the concerns are. The next process is to get into the nitty-gritty. We have answered the question about the road. There will be a 2-lane road that will be running at the back part of the property. Where it exactly ends on both places, that remains to be seen. These are some of the questions that we need to have answered. With regards to some of the units, the density, some of the other, the details, those still need to be answered. And that's when we take it to the next level. And it's going to be up to this board to see if that's where they want to go. And, quite shortly, I'm going to take a straw poll to find out what the board wants to do with this. So he can take the additional information that you brought him here tonight and put it into something that's concrete, and we'll get all the engineering questions answered. We'll get a lot of the details that you've brought forth answered at that particular time. We're not voting on anything right now. This is purely a concept plan. This is a committee of the whole. We don't vote on things in the committee. This is just where the developer brings his ideas to the village and finds out what exactly people are looking to do. So in my opinion, we have an obligation to take it to that next level to find out. There's not going to be a vote saying yes or no about this at the next meeting. This is where we're going to find out the sustainability of the product that he's going to be bringing forth. It's going to find out what the final density numbers are, and all the questions that you've asked tonight will hopefully be answered. So what we're doing right now is the right process. We're not jamming anything down anybody's throat. We've come to you 3 times for your input. And some of the questions have already been answered. I've seen some people with some of the same concerns, and this next level of the process will be able to flush these things out. And you will be invited back again to see exactly what these are, what the new renderings are, and what the new site plan is, and some more of the engineering. Get some of these, the details that we're always looking for. Because really no developer comes to you with his, look at where we started. I mean, he's reduced the density by over 20%. I think that's substantial, he's listened to what you guys are doing. So I'm going to ask the board if they have any other questions before we find out what everybody's tolerance is to take this to the next level.
I have a question. I've remained pretty silent because I wanted to hear what everybody and all the residents said about this. But one of my concerns is you keep projecting rental properties into this. And I'm wondering, you must project cash flow into this to put rentals into this whole equation. And I assume you would be managing these rental properties after the fact. So have you given any consideration to a development that is all owner occupied versus rentals?
Yes, and basically the way the market is going today, it's getting stronger and stronger every year towards rentals. So in fact, I think originally when I showed up here, I talked about possibly having 1 or 2 of those buildings as condominium units for sale. And after I got into it, when I started losing some density, the first thing I want to give up are the for sale units. In fact, I think you will see that within the next 2 years, most of your developments brought before you are going to be for rentals, including single family homes. I think, so I can assure you that everything I'm asking for is going to be a rental of the 200 units that I'm asking for.
Okay. Yeah, I have concerns with that and with the density as well. And looking at the plan, and maybe you can answer this question as to how far these buildings are off the railroad tracks, because I think that, plays a direct part into if people are willing to live there or not, and the noise issues with the trains. So I think to Trustee Cavelli's point about retail mixed use, and I am of the same opinion that I was hoping that there would be some sort of buffer to the residential development, and that would serve as a noise block, for lack of a better word, for the residents that live behind there. And now we're backing it right up against the tracks, and I wouldn't want to rent there personally, to have the train going by every 20 minutes. So I have concerns about that, and what is the distance that those are off the tracks, as they said?
I don't know, Kevin, could you?
I want to say they're 100 feet from the tracks, but we're 30 feet off the property line. I think they're 60 feet, 60 or 70 feet from the property line to the tracks.
And the road was 30 feet, and then the distance of the tracks was how much?
It's close to 100 feet from
So
Okay.
it's 100 feet.
I live, I'm guessing here, a half mile away from the train tracks, and I can hear the train when it goes down the tracks. So I just worry about that, and I worry about the marketability of apartments that abut the train tracks. So that's one of my concerns. Density, the character of the neighborhood, I don't really see it fitting in, and this isn't a slam on your product, because I view this, that was a good way to put it, that this may be put in a better place than the current location. But it doesn't really fit in with the single-family homes that abut this property, in my opinion. And as far as the traffic goes, I am worried as far as this access road going out to Cary Algonquin Road, and what type of signal improvements we're going to need there for the increased traffic if this were to be developed and we have hundreds of cars coming out there every day. Do we need to put in a stoplight, and what is that going to cost the village to do so? So that's another concern I have. But you know, overall, I do appreciate the fact that you reduced the count of units. I would have liked to have seen it reduced way far more. So I sort of view this as, I know you want to make a profit. You came here asking for the pie in the sky, and then you came back for, you know, a little bit of an adjustment to appease everybody. And I thank you for that, but I'm not convinced that it is enough, in my opinion.
Any other comments from here?
Well, I can appreciate it. I think anytime something new is coming, there are very legitimate concerns. There's a lot of angst. And I think you realize that and you're acknowledging that. I would have to say, though, that my experience for my regular job is that I do see a lot of these type of properties down the train line. So I agree, and I look at it and say, boy, would I want to be by the train track? No. But millennials, it doesn't bother them at all. My kids, my nieces and nephews bought a 3-story townhome right in Palatine, butting up to the tracks there. You take the train down the line, you're going to see that. So I think that for some of us, in my particular age group, it may not be something that's appealing to me. I think that we're seeing a lot of times younger people in communities that aren't buying because they're mobile. They don't buy right away. They rent. They want a nice rental. They want a luxury type of rental before they get to a point where they're set in a job. You don't see people that work at jobs as long as they used to. You don't see people working at jobs 30 years anymore. It seems like people are more transitionary with their employment. Not all, but I'm saying there's a large group that's doing that in some of the younger population. I don't think that if you go down, you see Palatine, you see Arlington, you see Barrington, they don't have a problem with properties being abutted to the train tracks. And if anything, that would deflect some of the noise that people are hearing if something is there. So if someone's concerned about that, I think that may have a positive impact on the people that are in the Maplewood area, that it may help them. I also look at it and I say, what we're tasked with here is that we have a seller. We have someone that owns a property that happens to be a school district that wants to sell a property to increase revenues for them, because they need to do that, and they're just spending money and not getting anything in return. I feel like we owe it to anyone, and that includes a seller, to say, let's hear what we can do. And we always need to be respectful and get a response and give you positive and negative, our opinions, both positive and negative, so that you can decide what you want to do to move forward. I think we should see this through to fruition to see what you come up with, because I think there are legitimate questions that we don't have answers to yet because of where you're at with it. And I think those need to be addressed so that it can alleviate people's concerns, or it could go the other way and say, hey, this isn't going to work. I just don't think we have the information yet to be able to determine that. You'd have to go to the next stage.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, I mean, you said we're not taking a vote tonight, but if you're going to take a straw poll whether or not we want to move it forward, I mean, if I say, no, I don't want to move this forward, it's basically my vote. If I say move it forward with this project, if this comes before us at the end of the day, I'm going to vote no on it.
As
So,
is.
I mean, you can go forward with it, but I feel like you'd be wasting your time.
I think it'd be helpful too. We don't necessarily have to give it a thumbs up or thumbs down right now, but are there things that maybe trustees like about the development or things you think need to be improved upon? It'll be helpful to give the developer here a little bit of guidance of what you may want to see going forward on the project or some items that you think need to be worked on a little bit more.
Yeah, we've heard from this side. How about this side? What are your comments? Pardon me?
No comment.
Okay.
I'd like to see, talk more about the access road and just get that a little bit more straightened out, but I'm okay.
I don't like how dense it is. I do like the townhomes that were presented to us originally, not the ones that were presented to us tonight. I do not like the aesthetics of the multifamily housing that was presented tonight at all. And I was hoping to see retail. So that's where I'm at.
Well, let's kind of drill down on some of these, if you don't mind, Trustee Cavelli. When you're talking about retail, where in the project, or development, I should say, where would you like to see that? Just as a point of interest, so maybe you can give him some thoughts.
Well, like what Jake was saying is that, eventually if Metro comes and says we can build the road, I would hate to sell ourselves short by getting something right this second when we could have something better if it means we have to wait a little longer. So that's.
So you're looking more towards the east side of the development?
Correct. And I'm just thinking future overall. Whatever we end up with, this is what's going to be there forever. So again, if it means that we wait a little longer, if we figure that road situation out, then I would rather wait a little longer and do that.
Okay, no comment. And you want the more information on the road?
Right.
Did you want to elaborate on anything else any of the other concerns that you had that might help you with moving this project forward?
Well, we were told we can't really distinguish between apartments and the multifamily or the condominiums, so.
I know you were looking for more of the, as you
I'd
said
rather see
before.
single family, high density. I'm not so concerned with the density. It's the type of density. That's where I'm having some issues with.
Well, you have some of the feedback here. Is there anything that you feel that can alleviate some of their concerns, that could, answer some of their questions that you have now? We got, Trustee Cavelli has been very steadfast in her idea about retail in that particular area. Is that something that you feel that you could fit into that part? You said you had some interested parties, cleaners, nail salons, or any of that stuff.
It'd be very difficult to make it work.
Would it be difficult to make it work?
As it stands.
Yeah, I think I put my best foot forward, and I brought it in here, and if it's not going to meet with you, I can't bring in much. The elevations could change. A lot of those questions can be answered, but the general concept, if you're not in favor of that, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to go through the public hearing and hear this and drag this community through it. And, maybe someone else can do it. I put my best foot forward, and I think I've stretched probably a little too far. So, and if it isn't going to work, it isn't going to work. It's just, so.
All right, well, just kind of seeing if Jim, you don't want to see this move any further?
I think I've made my opinions clear on it. I think I'm not accepting of this proposal, and I voiced my concerns about it. So, yeah, I'm not voting yes for this, no.
I would like to I would like to see where it came to. I would like to see some changes made. I think you've made some positive changes, and I'd like to see what else could be made so that we could make a good informed decision.
I think I made myself clear too.
Okay. Well, here, I think, you know what, you've done a great job with the reduction of the density, which was the biggest part of it. You know, some of the other issues, the aesthetics and the types of product, that's something that can be answered. I wouldn't mind seeing this move to the next, so we can get drill down on the actual answers that we need to get. This could really come together quite nicely. I mean, I think that there's an opportunity here. I think we owe it to a potential business and a landowner to see what we can do and how we can get this thing to where everybody can live comfortably within their neighborhood. I think that the neighborhood over there is very nice. It's charming. That's why I made those comments about the aesthetics of the building, that I don't think that fits in nicely with that area, and that's something that can be dealt with. The density, you've made a 20% reduction in density. I think that's a great step. So you're at your bottom line with your density. There's no other changes in your densities at all. That you're right where you need to be.
Pretty close, pretty close. I can tell you this, if I can't have the 200 apartments, then I can't make it work. It's impossible. I can't do it.
Okay.
What was Trustee Betts' opinion on it? Were you in favor of it or not in favor?
I would like to see more and see it go forward.
So.
And yours is no.
As I stated before, no.
She just wants single family?
Correct.
Well, from the math that I have here, I don't think that we've got the support to move this to the next level. There's too many questions that are left unanswered. The big one that we have down here is the retail and the single family. You know, single family, you've told us that you can't make that work.
Right.
The density and some of the other issues, I think that we're at a point where you can't go down any further. And it's disappointing. I think it would be a good fit for you to work with the Village of Cary. I think that we're missing the boat here by not giving a developer an opportunity to, really fine tune and look at something. It's almost, it's disappointing. I think that we owe a business that wants to come into town to have an opportunity to fine tune things and give us some concrete answers. How can you make a decision without all the final answers? And to ask some of these other people that don't support it, I feel that they need to have these questions answered too, so that they feel that they can make an informed decision. So if anybody would want to join me in moving this to the next level and see what we can do, I think that we might be able to have an opportunity here.
Well, what could you potentially change moving forward? You have to have the apartment buildings, you said.
Yes.
What else do you have to have, and what is workable as far as changes?
Well, once I have the apartments, there isn't a lot left, is there? I mean, I could do maybe some less townhouses or something like that, but you need a certain amount to make that work because of all of the infrastructure you have to put in on the development. And I mean, I can't just blame the school district who have a contract with over the price. I mean, a lot of these things that are being required to take, that have been pointed out to me, the road, you've still got to demolish the school on the things. You take those things, and if you get the land, I got it from the school district for nothing. I couldn't do it. So
Well, I know at one of the meetings you were talking about the detached homes that were closer together. What happened with that?
The zero lot line.
that turned out worse than I thought. I originally lost more density than I expected. And when it came out, I did an exercise like this in Lake Zurich. And I found out that what I could sell my homes for in Cary was about $150,000 less. So I was dead. I misread something totally.
Okay.
Totally. So, and I personally think that this development, if it's done right and gets off the ground, the only way you can do that is with density by your standards. And if you do, I think it's going to eliminate a lot of additional issues that are going on in this community. Your housing values are not favorable right now. Part of it is, and I'm bringing something to this community that's totally different. It does not compete with what's here on the things. And what you're trying to do, and you're trying to get it, and ultimately you may get it, is more of the same. So what you're going to do is, it's going to turn out a lot worse than it is today. And I think what I'm bringing to this community is something that, when I leave this community, if I finish this, it'll be much better than it is today. Much better. Because it's happened in every community that I've brought a development to, and I've done this for 45 years. And there is not one case where the community hasn't been better off. And I encourage you to call every village. I'll give you the name of them. There's 35 communities, and every one will tell you the same thing. And I understand where you're coming from, and I'm at least thankful that you're telling me this at this point. I don't want to go through a public hearing. I don't need to tear a community upside down. And if you, the village fathers, and Mr. and Mrs., I've got to be careful how I say this, but if you don't like what I'm bringing to your community, tell me now. And I'll go home and watch football. I mean, I don't care. But I want you to remember something. There will be a day when each of you will sit up here and say, you want to know something? What he said makes a lot of sense and we should have done it. And remember this day. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Just one other, I mean, this is just for a matter of record, there was another developer that was interested in this piece of property a number of years ago, and it was substantially more dense, and it was all multi-story buildings. So this is a better opportunity for us.
I don't recall an exact unit count on that developer. In fact, it was claimed there was no knowledge of a total unit count. So I don't think it's fair to compare that.
Okay. All right, so I don't think, unless anybody else over here is willing to move this forward, we don't have an agreement to get this to the next level. Well, thank you very much for your interest in the village of Cary. Sorry it didn't work out for you.
Thank you very much.
We both lost. 7:45.
I think that's it. Hold on. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.
I'm sorry, say that again. I can't hear you.
Disappointing.
You're so sweet.
So does this mean it's dead?
You're in town now.